tournament.
Hello, everyone out there in Schoology land. We are sorry for the technical difficulties. We had some issues sending out that link. So we're going to give you a few seconds to trickle in, and I'm going to smile and wait for you guys to come in. If you are inside and you can see my face smiling right back at you, and you can see the screen we're sharing, it should say the Schoology Compass webinar series. Please throw a confirmation in the chat and just let us know that things are working on your end. That would be helpful for the blood pressure of many of the people in the room with me. It looks like everything's a go, which is great. Yes, I'm seeing the numbers jump up. Wow, it's pretty exciting, actually. It's like I won something, but it just means things are working. So I'm going to go ahead and officially welcome you all to the Schoology Compass webinar for January 2019. I can't believe it. We started a new year, and I hope that all of you joining us are staying warm in this first polar vortex. I know that we are attempting to do the same here in New York City. It's very, very cold. So first thing I want to point out is you might notice some new digs here. I'm joining you from the Schoology HQ studios, and I'd like to give a quick shout out to Joe Basello and Dave Wolper for really putting this together and upping our production game. So thanks to them, the entire Schoology marketing team, for getting this going. We're pretty excited about it. We might look a little new, but I promise you that we're going to give you the same dedication to really informative webcasts and webinars that we've done in the past, and we're going to bring them to you moving forward into 2019. So that brings us to today. I am not on an island myself. I am being joined by two of my favorite colleagues, Schoology-wide. We've got Lisa Bona and Kellie Ady joining me on the line. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome.
Hey.
Are you guys staying warm where you are?
I can honestly answer yes, because I'm in California.
And I can answer yes as well. Even though I'm in Denver, it's way warmer here than most of the rest of the country.
So 2019, I know we've all been hard at work, and those educators out there have been back into the new year well before the new year actually rolls over. But I wanted to ask you guys, just to get started with our sort of newish webinar series, what you're excited for in the new year in 2019. That could be Schoology-wide or personally, just to kind of throw things out to you while we wait for people to trickle in. I wanted to say, what are you excited for the most in 2019 in this new year?
Lisa, you go first.
Okay, well, mine's not really Schoology related. I have my first kid going off to college this year. He's going to graduate from high school in May and go off to college in the fall. We don't know where he's going because he hasn't got all of his acceptance and rejections, but that is personally really exciting for me.
Well, mine went last year, and it is exciting. I think for this year, I think one thing I'm excited about is getting to see some new places. I'm trying to plan a trip to New Zealand for like next winter break. So it'll kind of spill over into 2020, but I'm counting it for 2019. So I'm excited for maybe some new views down under.
All right. So let's jump in. I want to take a look at what we're gonna talk about today, and we're gonna take a brief journey through some of the newest things we've released here in Schoology over the last few months, and then I want to talk about Compass a little bit with Kellie and recap what Compass is, what we've released already, and where we're going with it. And then we're going to focus this month on discussing assessment, not just the assessment platform in Schoology, but also how we're trying to address assessment as a whole, the individual moving pieces of assessing student learning and where that occurs, how that occurs, and how we can tie all these pieces together. We'll also take a look at some upcoming features when discussing assessment. And we'll talk a little bit about where you can catch us inside of Schoology, outside of Schoology headquarters. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right in to get started now, since we're a few minutes behind. And I'm going to move on. First thing I wanted to talk about, you might have recognized over the past few weeks, we've improved and simplified our logon. Now, we're focusing on assessment this month, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this. but I know that for those of you out there who have been waiting for and were excited about QR logins, I know that this is a game changer. So we hope you're using it, we hope you're satisfied, and we encourage your feedback on how things are going. But let's talk more about actual assessment releases here on Schoology. You know, Schoology assessments are not about just adding new question types. I know we talk about that a lot, and we've talked about that in webinars past. We're also trying to allow educators to advance what's possible and bridge the gap between tech and the classroom and offer flexibility and more possibilities. So with that in mind, we're going to open with observational grading. All right, so we're incorporating responses from paper assessments and into our grading and mastery calculations. Kelly, I want to pitch to you observational grading. It seems like a pretty simple addition, but I know that it has some powerful consequences. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss a little bit about observational grading, why it's exciting that we're finally able to get it into the assessment platform.
Well, I think, you know, one of the things that I think we do a lot in terms of learning and trying to gauge learning is having kids do things that we observe. It might be a performance task or a performance skill or something where we're watching them. And what we were doing in the past, you can do this now with assignments, right? You can make it an offline assignment and grade it via rubric, but there was no way to make that part of an assessment. And so now what they've added is a way for us to actually have something like a short answer, you know, basically a short answer type response, but that is not requiring a submission by the student, that the teacher can simply record the observation and have it gather the data that we want, especially if it's something that's been aligned to standards. And the other thing I think this does is if you do have a situation where you have to print an assessment or have the information entered later, it'll now be tied to any of those learning standards that you may have already put in there so that you get all the data, even if the students took the assessment offline. So that relates kind of to printing. So that's my story. Sticking to
it. Thanks. Moving forward, we've got some additional additions to course assessment reporting. So you can see here, now we're giving a little bit more individual data at the individual assessment setting. So how did your class do on this particular assessment? And then you can gauge that against how did each individual student do on an assessment and do some comparative analysis. Lisa, I pitched to you adding this a little bit more of an element of analytics into the assessment platform, or the assessment feature inside of Schoology. Talk to me about why you think this was an important addition for us.
I think it's important. I think it's something that course instructors have been actually waiting for in the assessment piece, and that now they'll be able to get some metrics on how students performed overall on this assessment in their course. They're going to see the median, the mean, where the quartiles landed, and then you can kind of see on the outside of that box plot, they're going to be able to see any outliers. So people who fell outside of the lowest quartile, so that they can actually pinpoint how students are doing. You'll be able to hover on things and it'll pop up on those outliers, what the score was, who it was, and then underneath it lists the score of every student in that course on that particular assessment. I think it's a very powerful report, and I think it's something that, as I said, our clients who are using assessment have been waiting for, and it's coming. So it's very exciting for everyone.
While we're talking about data, it's great to have it inside of the classroom and looking at that individual student assessments as well as the class-wide student assessments. But we've talked about in the future our commitment and sort of pride in our assessment management platform, AMP, as we call it. And we're bringing some new features there as well. Now we have the average score comparison report, right? So this lets us gauge how does performance in specific schools compare to the district average. And then our students in particular schools, where are they struggling? These are the types of questions that we're trying to answer with some comparison reporting. You know, Kelly, as we're building our data reporting out, what do you see the major benefits? You know, do you see it as standalone products as a side, or do you see a benefit of maybe bridging this reporting together combining your LMS with an assessment management platform. I know that we operate AMP and Schoology separately, but at the same time, there is an advantage to linking those together. No? I'm shouting into the void.
I'm thinking we might have lost Kelly.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully Kelly can bounce back in. I'm sorry. I thought maybe I thought maybe I offended her in some sort of way. At least I ask you. The benefits to obviously more data can help make decisions. But I ask you, do you see there being a great benefit in combining that LMS with AMP?
I think there is. There's a huge benefit in having your assessments and your data on your assessments in the same place where you have your information about how your students are doing in a course on a daily basis. So it's great. And this comparison report from AMP, teachers are going to be able to look at that. Building level principals are going to be able to look at that, and they're going to be able to see how the students are comparing to the district average overall. How are my students doing compared to that overall? And just looking at those breakdowns and figuring out what you need to do next to help your students move on to the next step. And I just think it's great that we're now looking at the AMP data right beside data in our courses, and that helps pull it all together and pull in that data for all instructors.
All right, well, while we wait for Kelly to rejoin us, I wanted to ask you, we're focusing in on assessment this month, and something we want to talk about is assessment literacy. All right, so your data is only as good as the data you capture, right? So I wanted to give you a few moments to talk about the importance of assessment literacy. What is that? What is the definition of that? And give you a few moments to speak on that.
So I think a little bit in the past, assessment literacy was kind of thought of as, I know what a formative assessment is. I know what a summative assessment is. I know what an interim benchmark assessment is. Maybe I know the educational law. So the one in effect right now is ESSA. Maybe I know exactly what I need to do because these particular assessments are going to be used in my teacher evaluation. So that's part of assessment literacy. But I think the piece at the bottom that we have in yellow, that's where kind of the, I want to say caution flag can kind of come out, in that we don't always, as educators, know which type of question we should use to garner information or the best evidence of learning in a particular assessment situation. And taking that word assessment in its broadest sense, basically anything that you do in a classroom or in a course is assessing students' learning. So even on homework assignments or any type of test or quiz you're doing or a formative ticket out the door, what would be your best question type to use? Do you want to use selected response or constructed response? Or when do we bring in performance assessments and what do they mean? And what does it mean personal communication? What am I observing when I am using personal communication to observe what a student is doing? And just learning about all of those different aspects of assessment and assessment literacy. I think that's one of the important things that maybe has been left out of the assessment literacy, is that discussion of how do I write a high quality assessment item or question. And once I wrote that high quality assessment item to the best of my ability, how do I prove statistically with data that it's as good as I thought it was? Or do I look at the data and find out, wow, it wasn't as good as I thought it was? So there are just different ways that we can assess and look at students and find those data points to help us. And that's one of the things that's also included in that assessment literacy, and bringing all of that data back into the classroom for teachers and for students, so that everyone can see how they're doing and how they're showing evidence of learning.
You know, it sounds to me like in that case, it doesn't just begin and end with the assessment proper, right? It doesn't sound like student assessment is particularly helpful on an island, right? It sounds like it has to be coupled, that data, with evidence of everyday learning, and collating those various evidence points of student learning. It seems to be vital. So, Kellie, welcome back. I want to invite you into the conversation. Assessment literacy. I don't know if you could hear Lisa right there. Anything you want to add to the conversation, and talk about finding ways to bridge the gap of assessments as a standalone and actual observation of evidence of student learning?
Well, I'll do my best. My Wi-Fi totally cut out, so I heard bits and pieces. So if what I think you said is about this slide, I think that one of the things that is so powerful about having Schoology as a solution is that you can have assessments right in the same place where kids have other evidence of learning. So, like Lisa pointed out, I think, there's all kinds of ways of gathering evidence. So it might be a discussion board, or it might be an assignment, or it might be, like we talked about earlier, a performance task. When we have those things in different systems, it's just really hard to get an idea about what kids actually know. The purpose of assessments is to make an inference about student learning. That means you have to make the best inference you can. And if you have to get those data points from all these different disparate systems, it's just really hard to get that complete picture. I mean, not just for the teacher, but I think also for the student. Trying to keep track of well, I got this score on this test or quiz, but then I had this other assessment that I logged into this system for, and then I had this other thing that I did that was the clickers. It just doesn't provide a comprehensive or cohesive picture. So that was a long-winded response, Mike.
And I absolutely agree that putting it all together in one place is powerful for everyone. It's powerful for the student, it's powerful for the parents, it's powerful for the instructor in the course. Absolutely.
We wanted to pitch it out to you guys out there in Schoology land. We're curious as to when and if along your journey you've been giving some education on assessment literacy, and so we wanted to just get some information from you guys, just to include you in on the conversation. Kellie, ideally, when do you think would be the best to start bringing some of this professional development to would-be educators and current educators?
You asked me when I think it would be ideal?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think I don't. It's been a long time. I'm not going to say how long since I was in my undergrad, but I saw a survey that was from the early 2000s and reported that less than a third of teacher candidates had any kind of assessment coursework as part of what they learned. So obviously, I think when you're in those, student teaching and those pre-service programs, that's when you really need to start thinking about it, because assessments are an integral part of the instructional process. So if we're not thinking about how to do that wisely, we're really missing a huge step. So I think that has to start then. But of course, it's just like when you're a physician, you don't just get your medical degree and then you never ever take another course or another, training on new techniques. Having to keep up with that on a regular basis, I think, is also critical.
We're seeing right now some anecdotal evidence from our audience here. Let's see, with 51% of the audience voting, we're seeing a lot of no. We're seeing about a solid 63 to 60%. No one in pre-service had any sort of training in this development. Let's see, but more than 50% in there. Let's go ahead and launch that other poll. So now we're talking a little bit about after you got into education, after you're, now have you received any professional learning opportunities to learn about developing high quality assessments? really interesting. Are you surprised to see so much no?
I'm not surprised, actually. The yeses were actually a little higher than I kind of expected. As Kelly was saying, a lot of pre-service programs didn't require taking anything about how to write a high quality assessment. What does it look like? What does it mean? Just because it's like being a doctor, just because you're licensed to do something doesn't mean that you're going to be great at every single aspect of it. And I think that this is an aspect that has been left a little bit in the dust, at least in pre-service. I'll be interested to see what the numbers are for the once they've been in the service of teaching for a while, what their professional learning opportunities have been.
Seems like on this one, for that, we're seeing a very similar, really similar breakdown. So obviously, it's for those in administration out there, we're seeing that there is a need for this. There is a need for, this is a great place to invest in professional development, is in crafting high quality assessment. Let me go ahead and pop forward a little bit in our presentation here. Yeah, look at that. So it's pretty evenly split. You'd like to see that a little bit more skewed towards the positive, but I guess that's what we're advocating at this juncture.
It is.
So I guess that begs the question, what are we doing to help? And I'll pitch that back to you, Lisa.
All right, so here at Schoology, some of the things that we're doing to help with designing and creating high quality assessments, we're working on 2 different workshops currently in the professional learning department. And one of those is an assessment design workshop to understand the whole process of creating a high quality, effective assessment. And remember, assessment means evidence gathering device, right? So how do I write one that clearly and effectively assesses the standards that I'm trying to assess? Well, I do that by creating a blueprint and making sure that all of those standards that I need to assess are accounted for in that assessment. We do it by creating style guides so that any common assessments we're creating, we're all doing the same things at the same grade levels or within the same subject areas. Things like, if you use the word not, are you calling it out to students or are you not calling it out to students? So things like that go in a style guide. Building timelines for assessment milestones. Maybe you're going to give 3 benchmark assessments throughout a school year. Well, what does that look like? When do I need to start building those quality assessments so that they're ready to go in time and there's been plenty of time to review them? And all of that goes into that assessment design workshop. There will be on-site time in that workshop where an expert will be available talking about how to do all of these different pieces, but also available as you embark upon starting that journey. And then follow-up web time, the ability to communicate with that expert as you have questions. And then a second session that kind of follows but is an independent workshop is one on developing and evaluating quality assessment questions. So learning strategies for actually writing quality selected response, constructed response, and enhanced questions. They're all very different question types. So what are best practices for writing them and writing ones that are going to garner the statistics you need to prove that they were good questions. How to effectively use graphics and design your layout when you're developing your questions. Looking for internal consistency when you're developing those questions and those assessments. Again, there will be on-site workshop time to help with developing those questions while the expert is on the premises. And then follow-up time, again, for now you've been developing your questions for a while, you have any issues that have come up, anything that we need to talk about. And then finally, after the assessment is given, going back and looking at any available statistics and talking about the quality of those assessment questions. And once you talk about the quality of those assessment questions, looking at the quality of the assessment as a whole, and just discussing, did the assessment do what we were expecting before we started? So those are two that are coming soon that we are developing here at Schoology to help you all, help your staff in this process of learning and being more assessment literate on how to design a quality assessment and then how to write those really good assessment questions of all types.
So clearly, we've established there's a need, and it sounds like we're doing some pretty cool things to help with that. What if we've piqued some interest? What's the best way for people to keep their finger on the pulse of how to get involved in those workshops you've mentioned and to proceed?
The one great way is by signing up for Compass. We have the new Compass piece that is now available is the assessment and feedback piece, and they'll find out more information by signing up for Compass and getting some information that way.
Okay, so that's, as we should see on the screen here, schoology.com/compass to start getting involved for that. But let me go back to you, Kellie, because it's been a little while. I was out of the country for a little bit, and the last time I heard you speak on Compass, it was at Next, way back in the summertime. All of that warmth. And Compass has sort of become a real thing now. And so I want to go back in our presentation. Sorry, you dropped off the internet for a few minutes, so we're a little out of order, but this is a great way to go back right now. So could you fill me back in and just bring me back up to speed as to what Compass is, what we're trying to accomplish, and then maybe talk about what we've released so far and where we're going?
Sure. So, Schoology Compass is basically a program that we've developed here at Schoology to help districts think about how they can effectively use Schoology across the system in some very key areas that we know make a real impact with student learning. So as a company, we looked at all of the clients that we work with on a daily basis across the country, even across the world, and looked at what is really needed to be successful. And we saw some definite patterns emerge in terms of which areas Schoology really can fit well within, especially at a systems level. So what we did is we designed what we're calling these district success routes. So what you see here are the 5 that are going to be part of Compass. This is initially, that's not to say we won't add some in the future, but the first one we released was ongoing professional learning. And those of you that joined us back in November when Joe and I did it, we talked a little bit about that particular DSR. And idea being that this is designed for district leaders who may want to pursue using Schoology for something like this. And how do they do that and manage the change that has to happen to get that going across the system? So while these aren't necessarily things that are like PD training resources on how to use the platform necessarily, we have other resources for that, including our PD team and our support center. This is more about, let's find out where we are with our practices. Are we using in Schoology now? And then how do we move forward to actually start to move the needle if we want to move ahead with using Schoology for ongoing professional learning? So it's basically just a set of resources there. So we released OPLs, we're calling it first. Curriculum frameworks on here as well. We know that there's been some really interesting research lately about the impact that high quality curriculum has on closing the achievement gap. So it's kind of time that we're going to talk about curriculum framework in this next kind of half of the school year. Student-centered learning obviously is another one that we'll be talking about. I think that a lot of people that are in Schoology now started thinking about student-centered learning and have been, kind of moving in that direction. So, I think people feel very comfortable with the content that's in student-centered learning, especially if you've been doing blended learning or have gone through the blended learning cohort with Gina Hartman, who's one of our gurus here at Schoology on the PD team. Assessment and feedback is the one that Lisa just mentioned. And again, when you think about the importance of having assessment and feedback happening where kids are actually learning every day, it's really important that's happening in Schoology if you're using that as your learning platform. And so, what we want to talk about for this one is if you're a district leader and you are responsible for assessments and data collection at your district, where does Schoology fit into your instructional kind of focus area for assessment? And then how can you leverage Schoology in a better way? So this is all based around the idea of continuous improvement. If you have seen me speak before, you've seen us talk about the student-centered learning model that we have here at Schoology. And we start with that planning stage. How do we think about where we want to go? We move into engaging with that plan, and that might be with adult learners or with student learners. We need to then monitor the progress of that. How do we know how we're doing? And then once we are in that stage, what do we then do? How do we make adjustments to really fit the needs that we have? And all that begins with identifying your current state. So when you look at what the content is inside of those Compass DSRs, really it's about, first of all, taking a diagnostic to find out, where are you with using Schoology for professional learning or for assessment and feedback. And then you'll get basically some feedback on where you landed there. And then we provide recommendations on things you could try next, and then some resources around change model to help you again push that needle. So I don't know, Mike, if that helps, but if we want to, we can actually take a peek at the assessment and feedback DSR. We'll keep fingers crossed on my Wi-Fi staying active here. I'm actually using my phone as a hotspot.
Of making a slide, I suppose we'll go ahead and take that peek.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter here, Kelly.
Okay.
Okay, should be able to. There we go.
All right. So fingers crossed again. When you get into the course, when you sign up for Compass and you've decided to take one of the success routes, you'll be given a join code. And luckily, Lisa Bona was one of my guinea pigs for the assessment feedback. So we're looking at this as if this were Lisa. But when you get in, you'll see obviously there's some opening resources on what it is to be inside of this particular success route and what the expectations are. But where we really start to dive into getting into where you are currently is in this getting started folder at the very top. And what this does is it takes you into a place to take a diagnostic assessment. So it's basically 25 questions about your current practices around assessment and feedback. Some of which are structural in terms of what you have in place just at your system level. Are you doing common assessments? Are you using PLCs? Are you already using third-party test banks? And even are you using some of these things in Schoology? Are we using test quiz and or course assessments? Are we leveraging AMP? So after you respond to all those questions, then the next phase is to actually think about what your results look like. So what happens inside of the Schoology system is in terms of the course, when you click on the grades area, you'll see that you've been given a particular Compass level. So we have these Compass levels going from entry all the way over to innovating. And depending on where you land, we provide recommendations on, if you're at this level, what could you do to move up to the next one? So in this case, Lisa would see that she was at the adopting level. We'd provide some suggestions for her, along with some ways to get through the change process to help her get to that next stage. The other thing that we're doing is we've aligned all of these assessment items to standards. So if you want to know at a kind of a deeper level what you could actually work on and focus on, you would click on Mastery. And when you click on Mastery, you'll see these different standards and how you may have scored on those to identify an area of need. So I'm looking at Lisa's Mastery area here. I would notice that we've got a lot of green, but when we get down to learning communities and leadership, the scores are a little bit lower there. So if she needed to move the needle in a particular area, these would be two good places to focus, thinking about how to bring those folks up to speed, especially when you're talking about leadership, because they're so critical in helping initiatives be successful. So after looking at scores, the next thing is then to go through the process of thinking about really where are you going? What goals now do you have around assessment and feedback based on the diagnostic and what you know about your own system? And then how do you get there? So we've got recommendations. We have a place for you to make a communication or training plan. Think about what kind of a logic model would work best for your system. And then now that module 3 folder of how do we know we're going, the monitor stage, some ideas on how you might gather some data along the way to make sure that you're progressing as you want to. So that's sort of what you can expect. If you log into any of the Compass courses as they're released, you'll see a very similar structure. Obviously, the content is tailored for whatever that district success route is, but at the bottom level, at the foundation of it all, is that underlying need to address change across the system and do that for whatever your goals are. All right, so Mike, you can take it back.
Sure. So once again,
and thanks, Lisa, for being the guinea pig.
If that's new to you, or if that's something you're excited about, I want to push you once again towards Schoology.com/compass, where you can get the ball rolling with your district and start getting involved with everything Kelly just said. You know, I think while we're here, it might behoove us to pull back the curtain a little bit and talk about some assessment features we're going to release coming up. So let's take a look. First, grade by question, often requested, and we are delivering. So we're trying to streamline workflow, offer more flexibility, and offer more visual indicators. Kelly, since I have you here on the line and your Wi-Fi as well,
yeah.
Talk to me why you had mentioned earlier today and sort of in our pre-meeting that you think this is a sleeper hit of a feature, and I want to know if you would expand on that for me.
I don't even know if it's a sleeper hit. I think it's a hit. And it's funny because I was watching the questions come up in the chat area while we were presenting, and when we were presenting on what had been released, this was bubbling up, people saying, hey, when are we going to be able to see how students are actually doing on items? I think there are a lot of people that have stayed with test quiz simply because of the item analysis they could get out of it in that data, because we want to make sure that if we're making an inference, like I said earlier, we're making it on good data. What I really like about what we have here is that not only do we have grade by question, so if you have a short answer, let's say a short answer item mixed in with a lot of multiple choice or things that are auto graded, currently you'd have to scroll down on each student's assessment to get to that one item. When you can actually just say, I'm going to just grade all of the short answer responses in one fell swoop, it actually makes you a more consistent grader, because you're in that kind of flow. You've got the rubric there, and you're not having to, productivity wise, spend time finding that question. So just on a workflow basis, it's amazing. But what I also like about this is the fact that it tells you the question type, which is interesting on this screen, and then also the point values. And then once you click on, let's say if we were in the screen, we would click on the multiple choice question, and it would tell us the distribution of answers. So kind of akin to what you see if you've seen AMP for item analysis now. It doesn't have nearly that level of depth, but kind of what you really want to know is how did students do in each question, and if they didn't do well, what were the distractors that got them? So I'm super excited about this one. I know that the next logical question will be, when is this one coming out? We have not been given any specific timelines in terms of release dates, except that it's in development now and will be ready for back to school. So for sure, if you're thinking about, well, I'll need to train teachers and everything, you'll have this in advance of the new school year for sure. We know that. So
jumping on the other side of the product spectrum to that assessment management platform, or AMP, we've also will be releasing student comparison report. And while you're chatting, I'll let you go ahead and chime in on why you think this is also a powerful feature that we're finally getting into AMP. Data.
Yeah. And it's funny, like it's almost, you can't have a conversation about assessments being impactful without talking about the data you would use to actually make a change or identify something that's a need. So what this one does is, and this one is kind of interesting because first of all, you can compare students like across, systems, obviously, to see how they're doing basically across schools and teachers. So I think that one of the things that we've seen in the past is that once we released AMP, there was some great data we got at an item level and about the assessment itself. But in terms of comparison reporting and seeing if the students that we have, how are they performing against other classes, and are they on track, that kind of gets at that area of where do we have gaps in learning. So this is pretty powerful because you can look across schools and across teachers, and it's generic. So it's not like you would see specific, it's kind of aggregated data, but it just gives you a better idea of, okay, great, I know how the student did on this assignment, but is that in line with where other students are in the same classes or in the same classes in other schools?
And then, as long as I've worked here, we've discussed the challenge of the desire for people to print their assessments, right? What if we're not quite ready to move to a fully digital system? And so, we're always, it's never that we're not listening. We're always trying to find the best way to release a product that's intuitive and integrated into our current system. And so we are currently in the last stages of getting scanning and paper assessments ready to release to our clients. We know it's desired, and we've been working on the challenge, and I think they're really close to how this is going to be implemented across the system.
Right. And the thing was so necessary about this one, like you mentioned, the scenario where you may not have technology that can be utilized for every assessment, so you may have to supplement with pen paper. I think the other thing is, and this is at least the scenario we had in my previous district, because sometimes you've got a student who has an accommodation where they are not able to take that assessment. So right now we have printing available. That was released, so you can print course assessments now. The nice thing about this is this lets you, instead of having to enter that data manually, to scan that in and make it a much more streamlined process. And that was also, I think, a really heavily requested thing. And as much as we really want to move towards those technology enhanced question types, and they're extremely powerful, sometimes the infrastructure that's in place or student needs still have a need for printing. So,
all right, so the three of us have been having a wonderful conversation, but the truth of the matter here is that I guess our mission and our journey is never one-sided. It shouldn't be a one-sided conversation. You, everyone out there, everyone using Schoology, the millions of users we have, are part of this conversation, part of the team, and that is not just brand speak. That is the God's honest truth. Anybody who's been able to join us at Next or one of our conferences know that our team is always really willing to speak with you, answer questions, hear your feedback, and work with you. At least that's really the atmosphere we're trying to create. And so I wanted to just take a few minutes in this first webinar of the year to discuss where you can kind of catch up with us. And first, let's talk about Schoology Next for 2019. Tickets are on sale for those early birds, so you can check that out at schoologynext.com. If you get the chance to speak to anybody who was able to go to Next last year, you'll know that we had one heck of a time, and we plan on amping it up a bit next to, wow, that kind of worked out. We should write that down. And we're amping it up even more for 2019. So we'd love to see you there. We'd love to work with you. We'd love for you to attend some of the wonderful conferences we have and some of the sessions. It's really just a lot of fun, and it's a great way to build some community and get to know other Schoology users, get to know some of the employees here and some of the really great presenters that we've got in store. So Schoology Next, come and join us in Boca, get warm, get tan, get educated. We'll be there. We hope to see you there. So once again, that's schoologynext.com. But we have some other appearances where you can catch up with us coming up even sooner. And I'm not sure, Kelly or Lisa, will either of you be at FETC coming up?
We just returned. In fact, I just got home last night. So that just ended yesterday. So if you were there and you missed us, sorry. We have a great booth though. So if you're going to be at TCEA, which is next week, I will be there. Yeah, look for us. We have a brand new booth, and the marketing team did an amazing job with it. So if you're going to be there, make sure you stop by.
It's a good thing I wasn't supposed to go to FETC, because I clearly would have missed my flight. I sort of missed it entirely. So, as time generally does, it has flown by. We thank you for sticking with us in a little bit of our technical hiccup to begin. But Kelly and Lisa, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that there were some takeaways for everyone. If nothing else, I really think you should jump in and get involved and signed up with Schoology Compass. It's something we're invested in, and we're ready to plow ahead. So if anything, if we've sparked any interest with you today, definitely sign up. at schoology.com/compass. And we spoke about it a little bit earlier about starting to unify the pieces and the power of combining your LMS and an assessment management platform. And since you're just talking about Texas, I thought that maybe we could end with a video that we just shot and that we'll be releasing pretty shortly that I think sums up some of the powerful ways you can combine the product offering here. And we'll leave you with that. So from everyone here at Schoology, have a wonderful, safe rest of your January, which is tick-tocking away. And we will join you again next month. Keep your eyes peeled for an email letting you know when our next Compass webinar will be. So I'm going to go ahead and share this video. And with that, say goodbye.